Well, hey everybody, my name is Allie. It's great to be with you this weekend. We've been talking about grace to start off the year 2025 because it is the most foundational topic to a life following Jesus. So we've been looking at the gospel of grace, some things that it is and some things that it isn't, and some of the fake versions of the gospel and of grace that are out in the world. And when we first started talking about this topic amongst the teachers that we're going to teach in this series, I said, I already know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this fake picture of what a real Christian is supposed to be. I feel like I've discovered over time that it feels like there's this box my life is supposed to fit into, and today I want to break us out of the box. So let me pray for us. Lord, I just ask that my words would be according to your heart and your character, and that right here, right now, in this simple way that we're gathered, that you would set people free. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, I started to discover this little box that I was supposed to fit into when people would ask me the very normal but dreaded question of, what do you do? You know, you meet somebody new, maybe I met them in the gym or at a function at my kid's school, and they're like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, so what do you do? And I'm like, yeah, if we could just put that off for another week or two, because when I answer, I get some looks. So, wait, you teach at a church? You write books and Bible studies about Jesus. Yep, that's what I do. And they're like, okay. And I see it. I see this like little box. I get the you're serious about Jesus box. And I've been filling this in over time. I can tell you what it looks like. Here's a few things that are definitely not in this box. Definitely nothing you do on the weekend happens in the box. So, I probably don't go play pickleball and get beers with my friends like you do. I probably spend my weekend doing service projects from morning until night. If you're having a get-together, I'm not invited, probably not invited, because guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to wander the crowd asking you how your quiet time with Jesus was that morning. Just, how was that for you? What did God say to you? You know, that's not the party-going guest that you really want. And I've just learned these reactions over time tell me there's this box. And as I walk away from people, they're probably wondering where my long denim skirt is, right? I mean, I did have a friend, we were talking about this, and she said, you know, they're kind of coming back in style. And I was like, is that right? I don't know. Not for me, they're not, because it fits in the box, right? This little box that my life is supposed to look like. And really, at the end of the day, people just end up apologizing for cussing around me. And I'm like, you know what? You really don't have to do that. This little box that you want me to fit in, it doesn't have to feel that way. And even if you don't get you're a teaching pastor box, you have probably picked up on the fact that there are expectations. There are things that people believe about what your life is supposed to look like, feel like, what your interests are, how you spend your free time. There's a box that gets constructed around what life is supposed to be like following Jesus. And this box doesn't, frankly, sound very good to me either. And so today, I said, I want to talk about how grace really works in a life, because I think the box got created because we've bought into a fake version of grace. We don't really totally understand how grace works in a life, and so we just know we don't want it to look like that. And so today, all I want to do is go, hey, grace goes to work in every life, every single life, but it doesn't look like that. Grace does start to work in your life, though, from the moment that you hear the gospel and you receive the gospel for yourself. When I say the gospel, I just really simply mean when you come to a belief that Jesus was the Son of God made man who lived a life that was perfect and died on the cross in your place for your sin and then rose from the dead. And that you're invited to start that life with him that will last forever right now. That is the gospel. That's the good news. And the moment that you say, yes, that's for me, then grace begins to work in your life in a brand new way. Now, if you're not there, and I know that we have many people who come to Crossroads, and I'm delighted, and I want to say this message you might like even more, because I think that you're going to hear some of the hesitations that maybe you have in handing your life over to Jesus because you don't want to end up in the box. I think this box got created because there's a fake version of how our life begins to change, but it does begin to change. So what is that? The Bible calls that process of change something, and the word the Bible uses for it is sanctification. To be sanctified means to grow more and more and more over time to look like Jesus. It's the process of becoming, take a deep breath, holy. The process of becoming holy. Now, that's really what it means to look more like Jesus, because the one word that the Bible uses over and over and over from beginning to end to summarize all that makes God God is holy. And so if we're in this process of change that makes us more like him over time, that means we are in the process of becoming more holy, or at least we could be, right? We could be. 1 Peter 1 says this really, really clearly. It says that God wants our lives to be holy. It says, but just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy, because I am holy. We are called to become more like God over time. That's the process that our life is supposed to be in when we begin to follow Jesus. But it sounds impossible, right? It sounds a little scary, and we have this gut instinct that we are not holy. And I think that's a good one. We are not God, and holiness is all that makes God God. And what do you mean I'm in the process of becoming holy? That doesn't even make any sense, but 2 Timothy helps us out a little bit with how. What's going on there? What happens in a life when God gets a hold of it? 2 Timothy 1, 9 and 10 says he has saved us and called us to a holy life. Not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. This grace was given us in Christ Jesus before the beginning of time. But it has now been revealed through the appearing of our Savior, Christ Jesus. Grace. In 2 Timothy, Paul writes, it's grace that powers the change. It's grace that puts you on this trajectory to becoming more like him. But the problem is there's two different versions of how this works, and one of them has produced the box. And I want to offer you today that is a fake version of grace. That the way that we think grace works in our life, if it's anything like that, is actually the false, fake, empty, religious version of grace. It's not true. There's a real grace that's very, very different. But fake grace actually offers you not only this very small but very pretty box to fit your life in, it actually gives you some things to help you change. Are you ready for this? The first and most important thing that fake grace gives you is a get out of hell free card. I'll take it. Get out of hell free. Sounds pretty good. But you know what? Just tuck that in your pocket for later. You're gonna need that later. Don't lose it. Put it in your pocket. Keep hold of that thing. But for now, there's a checklist. I'm gonna download the checklist. I'm gonna hand it out. But don't lose the card. That's the good stuff. But later on, you're gonna need that. Right now, what you're gonna really, really need is you're gonna need the checklist. You're gonna need to get to work. And there's a picture of how a Christian is supposed to look. And what's gonna happen in your life now is we're gonna start working the bullet points. We're gonna go first stop this, then do that, get rid of these friends, pick up those, get rid of that interest. And apparently, over time, our lives get very much the same and very, very small. And this is the reaction that I feel like I would get when I would say, it's just so obvious with me, right? It's not as obvious with you. You don't have to tell everybody you meet that you work at a church. But if you did, if you told them you followed Jesus, you would find that version of the box. If that is anything like what you grew up hearing, what you thought of Christianity, what you thought Jesus wanted out of your life, any version of that at all, you need real grace to go to work in your life. And my hope is that you will want the work of Jesus in your life. Because when grace, real grace, gets a hold of you, there's good things that happen. Your life becomes lighter, more expansive, more beautiful over time, but we don't have that picture of change. We don't have that picture in our mind of what Jesus does when he begins to work in our life. And I hope you believe that a little bit more today. I want you to feel it. I want you to close your eyes for a minute. Humor me. Close your eyes. Actually do it. I'm going to read you some words from a conversational translation of Matthew 11, 28 to 30, and it's because I feel like you can feel the difference. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Those were the words of Jesus. That was the translation of what he said to his followers when he invited them in to a brand new way of life, a life that was powered by real grace. It feels nothing like this fake version where we go, someday I'm going to get out of hell, but right now I need to put a smile on my face because, small price to pay, you sinner. Just get to work. Feels nothing like that. And way too few of us ever discover how real grace works because we withhold ourselves from Jesus because of this. We don't actually want him to get a hold of our life because who wants that? Who wants to get smaller and more standardized and, more oppressed? You want the life that those verses promise, right? If there's one thing I know about us collectively as a culture, as a community, as individuals, we are tired. We're worn out, we're exhausted, we're anxious. And Jesus speaks right to that with his invitation to a life of real grace. There's 3 things I want you to know about how real grace works that I hope completely change your understanding of what happens to a life when Jesus gets a hold of it and makes you want to give yours to him maybe a little bit more. See, real grace comes through him. It comes through a person. Real grace comes to us through a person. It's actually the presence of Jesus himself. He offers a relationship. That's what those words mean. Come to me. Get away with me. Keep company with me, he said. Walk with me. This is an invite to know someone, not orders and a progress report. That's a boss, right? Show up at a meeting, tell them how you're doing, hit the bullet points, walk out the door, wait for your raise. That's a boss relationship. What Jesus is offering in those words is a relationship that's much more familial, much warmer. It's an older brother, a best friend, a father figure that you can walk with and work with, he said. And he recognizes where we're beginning. He recognizes we're coming to him. When we encounter him, really, any of us, we're exhausted in some way. We're burned out. And we're definitely tired of the religious box that we were told we should fit in. And that's what he wants us to walk away from. He's like, yeah, I don't really like that either. I didn't even make that box. So you can just jump right on out into a life that, it's not that it's without work, because he said, come to work with me. Walk with me, learn my rhythms. There is discipline and work and things like that occur as we follow him, and even very difficult things sometimes. But the way that it's occurring makes us lighter, gives us life back, even down a path that includes tough stuff sometimes, and work and rhythms and learning new ways and things that don't always come naturally to us. We begin to get that, oh, this is actually going to be better. And frankly, I'm really not sure we always believe that. And I'm trying, and I want you to try with me to hand over all the parts of my life to him, because I'm not sure we're fully convinced of the truth of that invitation yet. What if you began to think, as of today, about grace with a capital G? What if grace was a name? And what if you could put it in the place of the name Jesus? Romans 6, Paul actually talks a lot about, in Romans 5 through 8, what happens to the life of a believer when you actually receive the gospel. And he talks all about it in those few chapters of Romans. And one thing he says in the middle of that gets us really close to this idea. He says, "For sin shall no longer be your master, because you are not under law, but under grace." Grace is the name of your new master. You had an old one, and he had territory, and he had a kingdom, and he had some power, and his name was sin. And then you begin a life with Jesus, and you have a new one, and his name is grace with a capital G. And he also has a kingdom, and he also has some power, and he also wants some things from you, but they're nothing like the other one. What if you did that flip-flop in your mind and you capitalized G and you realized that grace is an invitation into a connection with him? And the second thing this means for our life, second thing about how he works with us over time to make us more like him, is the place that he starts. And this is super important. He underscored this multiple times in some scathing words, frankly, that I'm going to read to you in just a second. Real grace always works from the inside out. Real grace goes inside first. Real grace never begins on the outside. Now, it reminds me of what fake grace tells us, reminds me of my favorite household chore. Anybody else like to power wash things? I am not kidding. It's so satisfying, right? All you power washers out there unite, because, I'll get out there with the power washer and I'm like, what else needs power washed? You know, we have a fence and there's a lot of trees that hang over one part of it, and it always gets the green algae stuff growing on it over time. And I just, and it looks as good as new. But you know what happens? About 3-4 weeks later, the algae's back. I don't mind because I like the power washing, but it always comes back. And fake grace tells us, just get in line for your scrub down. You're just gonna blow that dirt off the outside. It's gonna be great. You're gonna look great. And frankly, everybody's gonna be absolutely sure that you're following Jesus, because we're gonna clean that life right up. It's not a bad analogy for how fake grace tells us it works. But Jesus says real grace begins on the inside, where you can't see it for a while. And frankly, it doesn't maybe even convince anybody for a hot minute. Listen, Jesus criticized Pharisees harshly for keeping their focus on the external things of a life of faith. Listen to him just absolutely rail against this idea in Matthew 23. Jesus says this directly to the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee! First clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." I could have read you one of those and made the point, but I purposely read you both things in a row, which he says to them right in a row, because he was coming strongly against this idea that the most important thing was whatever was taking place on the outside of your life. He called them whitewashed tombs. That would have been that's like a ancient Jewish rabbi insult. You know what I'm saying? He was like, "You're a whitewashed tomb." Whitewashed tomb was a very offensive idea to a Pharisee because they spent their lives focused on staying clean according to the law. And a tomb held dead bodies, and dead bodies were the height of unclean. And Jesus said, all your external focus, all the things you're power washing, everything that you're trying to do on the outside, guess what you managed to do? The exact opposite. It wasn't that those things were neutral. It's that those things totally backfired. They completely backfired into a person that was actually devoid of anything godly. This is the most severe kind of words that Jesus spoke to them, because he was like, you are the leaders of the people, and how dare you lead them to a faith that is only on the outside, because real grace, the real work of God, starts on the inside of a life, on the inside of a heart, on the inside of your motives, on the inside of your life, in ways that a lot of times people can't see. So we don't like it, right? We don't like it for ourselves because we want people to know I'm decent, I'm good, like it's all good, I follow Jesus, you know? And we definitely don't look at each other like this. We don't want to believe in each other's change unless we can see it on the outside. Now, just to be clear, Jesus did give a metaphor for how your life grows over time and how you can see it on the outside. But that metaphor was fruit. Think about how different that feels than power washing. What kind of conditions, what kind of process, what kind of timing, and the wide variety of fruit available. There's so many different things that Jesus can grow in our life that will eventually become visible on the outside. Too many Christians, too many churches, too many people who claim to love Jesus just present the pretty box. And a glimpse inside actually makes you want to run away, right? I felt this way a little bit when we went to, don't hate me, all you Disney lovers, when I went to Universal Studios. I'm about to tell you a story. I need you to take a deep breath if you love Disney World and all the Disney things. Because I had like an existential level meltdown on the Dr. Seuss ride in Universal Studios. Now, this was a handful of years ago. My kids were younger. We'd never done any of the Disney things. And so we're like, okay, we're going to do it. One of my kids loved Harry Potter. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll do it. Now, I was probably not in the best place when this little meltdown took place. I was already on edge, let's say, because it was during the era where we were still required to wear masks all over the parks on the outside. So I wasn't doing very well. I actually wanted to punch the next person in Mickey ears who told me to pull up my mask. So that's kind of where I was. And we just decided, we're gonna take a little break. We're gonna jump on the Dr. Seuss ride. It's really not a big deal. Seems more like a tram than a ride, one of those. So we take our water bottles, we get on the ride, and the ride kind of rises up a little bit. Not up in the air like a tram, just a little rise to the ride, just enough that I could see out over the park and beyond into the parking lots. And when I say parking lots, I need you to visualize like 18 miles of parking lots. And so I'm like, oh, wow, that's a lot of parking lots. And I look beyond that, and there was like a 5-tier highway system happening just beyond that. Orlando, apparently, in this corner, had a massive, multi-tiered highway system. And all of a sudden, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm sitting in a pink piece of plastic in the middle of a concrete parking lot. Why did I pay thousands of dollars for this? And my kids are like, whoa, mom's upset. They're doing one of these to Bill, and my husband's like, he loves by serving. So he's like, what can I do? What do you want? And I'm like, I don't want anything except a plane out of here. Look at this. What are we doing? We've spent all our savings to ride around in some teacup in the middle of a parking lot. I just completely lost my mind. And I'm a pretty steady person. All evidence currently to the contrary. But, this was full-blown meltdown. And I just want to say, I think this is an appropriate reaction when we get a glimpse of something that is totally fake. Now, I know some of you Disney lovers are like, it's not fake, it's wonderful, and there's this and all these things. I believe you. I know Disney lovers too. Just go with me here. When we get a glimpse of something that feels completely empty, like we've been duped, like we paid too much for this thing that ended up being nothing like we wanted. If you're somebody who ended up here because that's how you felt about your experience with other Christians or other churches, I just want to say, I hope and pray that this place never presents you with that picture of Jesus. Never presents you with that picture of what a life that follows him is like, because the very last thing that I ever want to be is some picture that ends up being a false, empty, fake box that people run away from. And I just want to say, I think Jesus would support that reaction. He didn't like it either. He was having a meltdown too, a much more holy one, but you know what I mean. He's like, no, I'm out. This is not how my grace works. The best people in my story are who I want all of us to be. I want to be somebody that makes room for grace to start working and doesn't demand the external evidence of bullet points and checklists before the fruit has a chance to grow. Real grace gives that opportunity. It starts in hidden places. It works for a long time. It grows over time in a process that, yes, eventually grows fruit, but does not end up a whitewashed tomb. See, real grace doesn't mind hidden starting points. Real grace actually doesn't mind any starting point. The third way that real grace works in our lives is by personal knowledge. Real grace knows us, knows us, inside and out, knows where you've been, knows what your hurts are, knows what your joy is, knows what you love about your life, knows what you hate about your life, knows everything about where your life is going and where he wants to take you. Grace knows you and doesn't work through a corporate checklist that he's working on over time. You know, when I make lists, I am a list maker. Anybody else love to make the lists? Back in the day, pre-Enneagram, I know we all love the Enneagram now, whatever. I've actually never taken the whole thing. But back in the day, I took the Myers-Briggs. Did anyone else take the Myers-Briggs? I'm a strong J, so I love a good list. I like closure. I like finality to things. I've even gotten out of bed to cross things off of a list. If you're a J, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I love a good list, but do you know when I make lists? I make lists because I'm afraid I'll forget. I make lists because I need to do something at an exact moment, or I need to finish it at a certain time or on a certain day. I make lists because I don't want to let other people down. I make lists because it's the way that I keep myself organized, and guess what? That works great for school or work or home. It doesn't work great for our spiritual life. Jesus doesn't work like that. And the reason he doesn't work like that is because he knows you. Those verses I read you say, I'm not going to lay anything ill-fitting on you. I'm not going to lay anything that doesn't fit you, doesn't fit your life, doesn't fit your experience, because he knows who you are and where he wants to take you. But we're very uncomfortable with this personal working. We just want to know, where are we going next with this? And what are you going to do in his life? And how do I know if this is right? It all is one big invitation into a life with him, where frankly, we don't get those answers up front all the time. It's a walk with grace himself. I want to share just a tiny clip of a video with you, and I have this video for a very specific reason. This video is of an architect who's actually a part of our community and also a friend of mine. And I went to interview him for a project that I've just completed. Now, that project was for a video study of my brand new book. It actually just came out this week, super exciting. And the book name is called Blueprint for Belonging. And I originally wanted to talk to Kurt, is his name, because he's an architect, and I wanted to ask him some questions for the study about blueprints and design and how we build things using blueprints. And as I was talking to him, he said some interesting things for us. Now, quick note, if you want to join up with the book study that you're about to see a tiny little clip of, you can totally still do that. It doesn't start for another little while. You can go to crossroads.net/women. There's already over 1,100 women signed up all over our community, online, offline, in person, by yourself. You can do it any way you want. You're welcome to join. I would love to have you. But that's why this video exists. You're going to see the extensive conversation with Kurt related to the book in week 2 of that study. But I wanted to share a little tiny bit of it here, and I want you to put on a very specific mindset. Now, the conversation takes place inside of our community's building called The George, and it's a burned out old Catholic church that we renovated. And Kurt was the lead architect on the team that did this historical renovation. It's a beautiful space if you've never been in the building. And so we're actually sitting in that space, and Kurt started talking about what it was like to try to figure out what are you going to keep and what are you going to take away, and how do you do this in an old space? And I want you to listen and consider the fact that your life, as you begin to follow Jesus, is not a new build, it's actually a historical renovation. Now listen to what Kurt says with that mindset.
It's interesting because some of the most sort of catastrophic things that we discover sometimes become the most beautiful things in the end. We leverage them to the good. And so, I mean, just like we're sitting in this space, and everything above 20 feet has cracks and peeling plaster. It's ruinous. Mm-hmm. It's a ruin. It's like going to Rome and walking around ruins, and to put your hands on a ruinous structure is beautiful. Yeah. There's something really magical and beyond explanation and beyond time. And that's what's going on here. That's the gem of this building.
In that space, he mentioned from 20 feet up, what they ended up doing in that space was 20 feet up, he told me, they just sealed it, cracks and all. And 20 feet down is completely fitted for a modern digital space where you could do anything you could do in any of our other buildings. And as I thought about that, as I listened to him talk, I couldn't help but think, this is exactly what Real Grace does. Real Grace knows what you're going to need for the future. Real Grace knows the parts of you that need outfitted for the future, that need brought forward, that need some new technology. And Grace also knows what parts of your story, your past, your pain, your mistakes, your cracks need sealed in and just kept. Because ruins are beautiful. They're beautiful. He said, when you get to put your hands on a ruin, what did he say? It's magical. There's something amazing about it. And friends, this is how Real Grace works. Real Grace is not looking to drywall everything and have you move on and look shiny and bright and new. Real Grace makes beautiful ruins. That's the work of Real Grace in anyone's life. I got an email from a man who did not understand this about a year ago. And he said to me in this email, he said, hey, by the way, I do not know if he was part of our community or not. It actually came through my website, so I have no idea. Was this person at Crossroads or not? No clue. But he said to me, you need to stop telling your story. It's shameful. And you need to shut up about it. And if you want to help Jesus at all, if you want to work in the kingdom at all, just let people see who you are now. And for just a second, I was really tempted to buy into the story of fake grace. That the best thing about your life is when everything gets drywalled and painted and looks shiny and new again. And the truth is, he's the one that bought into a fake version of grace, because I know I know that what real grace does is it seals in cracks, and somehow, some way, at the end of the day, it ends up beautiful and perfectly able to walk into the future, perfectly able. And that's the work of Jesus in your life, in my life. Somehow nothing in our past thwarts him from making it beautiful again. And this doesn't mean that he's not gonna go to work on some stuff, right? If you read the entirety of the New Testament, you understand Jesus is after holiness. And that is gonna implicate everything in your life. It's gonna implicate absolutely everything, and he cares about all of it. He cares about how you talk to your kids. He cares about whether you cheat in school. He cares about how you pay your taxes. He cares about who you sleep with. He cares about what you put in your mouth. He cares about what job you have. All of those things are going to be implicated on the path of holiness that he wants to put you on. But I gotta tell you, he knows you well enough to know it's your path. He knows what he's doing with you. He knows what your gifts are. He knows what future you need. He knows exactly which cracks are gonna make your ruins beautiful. And he knows exactly what your life is here to do. That is the power of walking with real grace. Real grace. The call on your life is high. It's a call to holiness. My goodness, is there a loftier call? But I gotta remind you today, you're not called to the checklist. You are not called to the good mom checklist. You are called to be holy. You are not called to a quiet time every single day at 6 a.m. You're called to be holy. You are not called to be a non-smoker. You're called to be holy. And Jesus is the one who knows exactly the steps on exactly the path to bring you over time to look more and more like him and have a life of fruitfulness. And that is the life of real grace. We gotta get rid of this box. Man, it is just killing us. It is killing us, and it's keeping us from handing over all the parts of our life to Jesus and letting him do his work. I just want you to hear his invitation in Matthew 11 one more time. He says, come to me, walk with me, keep company with me. I'll show you how to do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. The good news is that you have access to the power of grace to live a holy life. That's the good news. That is amazing news, but we gotta stop the scrub down. Gotta get rid of the checklist. Gotta believe that he can actually do that work in a way that frees you, in a way that you recover your life instead of losing it. I want to invite you to stand. If you just want a very simple blessing of that grace, I want to end with a couple of words from the Apostle Paul. Will you join me if you want to stand up wherever you are? If you're in this room, if you're online, you can stand up in a coffee shop, you can stand up in your living room. Maybe if you're listening in the car, don't stand up there. Everywhere else, you can stand up. And the Apostle Paul wrote over and over the same words in many of his letters. And I'm going to take it straight out of the letter that he wrote to the Romans. And he said, to all you who are loved by God and called to be holy, grace to you. Grace to you. Grace to you. Amen? Amen.